What happens when a man sworn to uphold justice becomes the architect of his family's deepest betrayal? Today, we uncover the shocking story of Judge Walter Branson, a pillar of his community whose actions led to devastating consequences. Betrayal, murder, and a scandal that shook the very foundations of trust. Behind the polished courtroom facade was a man hiding dark secrets. Secrets that would unravel in the most horrifying way imaginable. Walter Branson wasn't just any judge. He was a symbol of fairness and power, the kind of man people trusted to deliver justice. But beneath the robes and the gavel was a dangerous hunger for control, a need to dominate not just in the courtroom but in his personal life as well. That need set off a chain of events no one could have foreseen. And it all began with a betrayal so personal, so gut-wrenching, it shattered the lives of those closest to him. This isn't just the story of a family torn apart. It's a chilling exploration of how power can corrupt, how betrayal can destroy, and how even the strongest facade can crumble under the weight of hidden lies. Stick with me as we peel back the layers of this haunting case and uncover the devastating truths behind the Branson family tragedy. And before we dive deeper into this gripping story, make sure to hit subscribe and turn on notifications. If you love true crime tales that expose the darkest corners of humanity, you're in the right place. Let's begin. Walter Branson was the kind of man people admired, a self-made success story, born into a working-class family in a small Florida town. His parents worked tirelessly to provide for him, instilling values of discipline and hard work. Walter embraced those lessons, channeling them into an insatiable drive to rise above his circumstances. Through sheer determination and relentless ambition, he climbed the ranks of the judicial system, earning a reputation as one of Florida's most respected judges. In the courtroom, Walter was a force to be reckoned with. His presence was magnetic. He commanded attention with every word, every gesture. Lawyers, jurors, and spectators alike were captivated by his sharp intellect and ability to cut through complex legal arguments with ease. To the public, he was more than a judge. He was a symbol of fairness and authority, a paragon of justice whose decisions shaped lives and upheld the law. But behind the gavel and the robe lay a man with darker complexities. Walter's need for control extended far beyond his professional life. He despised vulnerability, both in himself and in others, seeing it as a weakness to be conquered. This disdain for fragility drove him to project an image of perfection, masking the cracks in his character. Beneath his polished exterior, there was a manipulative streak, a willingness to exploit the weaknesses of those around him to maintain his own power and image. At home, Walter's commanding nature created a strained dynamic with his son, Ethan. Ethan was everything Walter couldn't understand. Quiet, introspective, and uninterested in following in his father's footsteps. While Walter thrived in the structured world of law and order, Ethan pursued a career in technology, a choice that Walter saw as a rejection of the legacy he had worked so hard to build. Their relationship was distant, marked by unspoken disappointment and a growing chasm that neither seemed willing to bridge. Walter's need for dominance, his disdain for vulnerability, and his inability to accept those who deviated from his expectations were warning signs. Cracks in the foundation that would ultimately lead to devastating consequences. And now, let me ask you, do you think power changes people, or does it simply reveal who they truly are? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your perspective as we delve deeper into this complex story. Leah Branson's life was shaped by hardship from the very beginning. Born into a chaotic household, she grew up surrounded by the constant tension of her parents' volatile relationship. Financial struggles were a constant shadow over their lives, and Leah quickly learned the weight of uncertainty. Yet, even in the turbulence of her childhood, she found solace in a dream: to become a dancer. Dance became her escape, her passion, and her hope for a brighter future. Leah pursued that dream with relentless determination. Through countless hours of practice and sacrifices, she believed she was on the cusp of breaking free from the life she had known. But fate had other plans. A devastating knee injury in her early 20s abruptly ended her dreams of performing on Broadway. The loss left her adrift, struggling to redefine her purpose and find a new path forward. It was during this period of uncertainty that Leah met Ethan Branson. Their meeting felt like a lifeline. Unlike the controlling and brash men she had known in her past, Ethan was gentle, kind, and steady. He didn't just see Leah's potential. He believed in it, even when she struggled to believe in herself. His quiet nature and grounding presence offered her something she had never truly known: stability. Within a year, they were married, and Leah felt as though she had finally found the foundation to build a new future. When Leah discovered she was pregnant, it seemed like the beginning of a fresh chapter. She envisioned a life of shared joy and a growing family, a stark contrast to the instability of her past. But the reality of their situation proved more challenging. Ethan, dedicated to his work at his burgeoning tech startup, often spent long hours away from home. His focus on providing for their future, while well-intentioned, left Leah feeling isolated. The empty house and her growing belly became daily reminders of her solitude. She spent hours scrolling through baby forums, half-heartedly preparing the nursery, and wondering if she was truly ready for the role of motherhood. It was during these quiet, lonely days that Walt Branson began to pay closer attention to Leah. At family dinners, he noticed the way her laughter seemed forced, her eyes lingering on her plate during conversations. Walt, with his keen powers of observation honed in the courtroom, quickly recognized the cracks in her cheerful facade. He started making small efforts to connect with her, an extra question here, a compliment there. At first, it felt innocent enough. Walt's charm and commanding presence were hard to ignore, and his compliments seemed genuine, striking at the heart of Leah's insecurities. "You're doing so well," he would tell her during conversations about her pregnancy. "Ethan's lucky to have someone like you." These small moments, these seemingly harmless words, began to mean more to Leah than she realized. In a life where she often felt unseen, Walt's attention was intoxicating. He noticed her in a way Ethan didn't, or couldn't, because of his demanding work. Walt's ability to command a room, his confidence, and the way he made her feel special all began to fill the void left by her husband's absence. Walt, for his part, was equally drawn to Leah. He saw in her a younger version of himself, ambitious, yearning for more, but held back by circumstances. Her vulnerability wasn't something he despised, it was something he wanted to control. What began as casual conversations deepened into something more charged. Each visit to their home became longer, the conversations more personal. When Ethan was away, Walt would drop by, always with an excuse, delivering a casserole, dropping off a book he thought she'd like. His visits became a lifeline for Leah, a chance to feel seen, understood, and appreciated. The line between innocent attention and something more blurred faster than Leah could comprehend. One evening, as they sat together on the living room couch, Walt reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind Leah's ear. His fingers lingered for just a moment too long. Leah froze, her heart pounding. The silence between them grew heavy, and in that charged moment, she realized the nature of their connection had shifted. "You deserve to feel special, Leah," Walt said, his voice soft but deliberate. "You deserve to be seen." What followed was a kiss, tentative at first, but deepening when Leah didn't pull away. That kiss marked the beginning of an affair that neither of them could take back. For Leah, it was a moment of validation, a way to escape the crushing loneliness of her life. For Walt, it was control, a way to feed his ego and fulfill his own desires. Though she tried to rationalize it, telling herself it was just physical, Leah couldn't ignore the growing guilt. Each stolen moment with Walt pushed her further away from the life she had envisioned with Ethan. Yet, every time she tried to end it, Walt reassured her, his voice calm and persuasive. "This is our little secret," he would say. "No one else needs to know." What Leah didn't realize was how deeply this secret would entangle her in a web of lies and manipulation, one that would ultimately lead to devastating consequences for everyone involved. Walter Branson's manipulation of Leah began as subtle gestures, carefully crafted to make her feel valued in ways she hadn't experienced in a long time. It started with compliments, simple but targeted words that struck at the heart of Leah's insecurities. "You're handling this pregnancy with such grace," he'd say, or, "Ethan's so lucky to have someone as strong as you." These weren't empty remarks. They were precisely what Leah needed to hear during a time when she felt invisible in her marriage. Walt had a keen understanding of human behavior, a skill honed through years in the courtroom. He knew how to read people, how to find their weaknesses and use them to his advantage. Leah's vulnerability, her loneliness, her uncertainty about motherhood, and her need for validation was like an open book to him. He saw the cracks in her armor and positioned himself as the person who could fill those gaps, slowly drawing her into his web. At first, it all seemed harmless. Walt would stop by the house during the day when Ethan was at work, always with an excuse. A casserole for dinner. A book on parenting. Each visit stretched a little longer, the conversations growing more personal. He listened intently as Leah spoke about her fears, her struggles, her feelings of being unseen. "You deserve to be noticed," he told her one afternoon, his voice low and steady. "You're remarkable, Leah. Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise." For Leah, his words felt like a balm for her loneliness. She convinced herself that their connection was purely emotional, that Walt's attention was simply the kindness of a father figure. But the truth was far more insidious. Walt wasn't offering kindness, he was asserting control. His every word, every gesture, was calculated to make Leah feel dependent on his approval. And as his presence in her life grew, so too did her reliance on the validation he provided. The tipping point came one evening when Walt lingered just a little too long after dropping off a baby book. As they sat on the couch, talking about her future as a mother, he leaned in closer. "You deserve to feel special," he said, his voice soft but firm. Before Leah could process what was happening, he kissed her. It was tentative at first, but a question rather than a declaration. And when Leah didn't pull away, it deepened into something far more deliberate. From that moment, their affair took on a life of its own. They justified their actions as a fleeting connection, a way to fill the voids in their lives. But their secret meetings became more frequent, their stolen moments more daring. They met in the house Leah shared with Ethan, in his study, in rooms that still carried his scent. Each encounter pushed the boundaries further, escalating from brief touches to full weekends away under fabricated excuses. Walt's manipulation didn't stop with Leah. He used his experience as a judge to cover their tracks, ensuring that their affair would remain hidden. He was meticulous, instructing Leah on what to say, where to meet, how to behave around Ethan. His ability to control the narrative extended beyond their relationship, turning Leah into a willing participant in her own deception. What she didn't realize was how deeply entangled she had become in his web of lies, a web that would eventually collapse under its own weight. The consequences of their actions were already brewing beneath the surface, rippling through the Branson family in ways they couldn't yet see. Walt's growing obsession with maintaining control, Leah's increasing guilt, and Ethan's obliviousness created a volatile mix, one that was bound to erupt. Their betrayal wasn't just a personal failure. It was a ticking time bomb, ready to destroy everything it touched. And now, let me ask you, if this story has you hooked, share it with a friend who loves true crime tales. Let's keep the conversation going as we delve deeper into the dark truths of the Branson family. Ethan Branson never thought a single glance at his wife's phone would shatter his entire world. That evening, as he casually picked it up, a message notification stopped him cold. It was from his father, Walt, and the words made his stomach drop. "I can still taste you. Last night was unforgettable." His hands trembled as he opened the thread, each message worse than the last. Weeks of explicit texts and intimate exchanges played out before his eyes, the betrayal deepening with every scroll. Then he saw the final blow, a photo of Leah, sent from their own bed. He barely noticed Leah entering the room until she spoke. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice cautious. Ethan looked up, his face pale, and held up her phone. "What is this, Leah? Is this real? Are you sleeping with my father?" Leah froze, her face draining of color. "Ethan, please, let me explain," she began, reaching for the phone. Ethan yanked it back, his voice rising. "Explain. Explain how my pregnant wife has been having an affair with my father." Tears streamed down Leah's face as she tried to apologize, but her words only fueled Ethan's growing rage. He shouted, "You've destroyed us, Leah. You've destroyed everything." Desperate, Leah stumbled toward the couch and grabbed her phone, frantically typing a message. Ethan caught a glimpse of her text. "Come quickly. It's bad." His anger surged. "You're calling him? Even now, you're calling him?" he bellowed. In a moment of blind fury, Ethan lunged at Leah, his hands wrapping around her neck. She gasped, clawing at his arms, choking out his name, but Ethan couldn't stop. His rage consumed him until her struggling ceased and her body went limp. Silence fell over the room, leaving Ethan staring at what he'd done. Moments later, the sound of a car in the driveway jolted him. Walt burst through the door, his eyes immediately locking on Leah's lifeless body. "What did you do?" he demanded, his tone sharp and controlled. Ethan, trembling, stumbled through his words. "She told me everything. I didn't mean to." Walt interrupted, his voice low but commanding. "Stop. Listen to me. If this gets out, it'll destroy us both. You need to do exactly as I say." Taking charge, Walt methodically planned the cover-up. Together, they wrapped Leah's body in a blanket, loaded it into Walt's SUV, and drove to a remote wooded area. Under the cover of night, they dug a shallow grave and buried her. Walt scattered Leah's belongings nearby, carefully arranging the scene to look like a robbery gone wrong. Back at the house, Walt rehearsed Ethan's story. "She went out for a walk and never came back. That's all you say. Leave the rest to me." 3 days later, Ethan made the call to police, his voice shaking as he reported Leah missing. The community rallied, organizing search efforts and spreading her photo online. Walt played his role perfectly, appearing as the grieving father-in-law, his sorrow convincing everyone. But beneath the surface, the lies they had spun were already beginning to unravel. Now, let me ask you, if you were in Ethan's shoes, would you tell the truth or protect your family's reputation? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you think. Months after Leah Branson's disappearance, her case remained cold. The community's initial fervor to find her had faded, leaving her family and friends clinging to hope in silence. But on a quiet summer day, everything changed. A hiker stumbled upon a shallow grave in a remote wooded area nearly 50 miles from the Branson residence. Alongside the remains were scattered personal items: Leah's phone, a bracelet, and other belongings. Forensic tests confirmed the worst. It was Leah. The discovery reignited the investigation, but it wasn't until detectives reviewed surveillance footage near the burial site that the first crack in the cover-up emerged. Advanced video enhancement techniques revealed a black SUV driving through the area on the night Leah was reported missing. The vehicle matched the make and model of Walt Branson's car. Traffic camera records traced its movements, linking it to a timeline that led from Ethan and Leah's home to the remote wooded area. Detectives obtained a warrant to search the SUV, and the findings were damning. Fibers from the blanket Leah's body had been wrapped in were recovered, along with soil samples that matched the burial site. Every piece of evidence brought them closer to the truth, and the mounting pressure forced Ethan back into the interrogation room. Under the weight of irrefutable proof, Ethan's carefully constructed facade crumbled. His voice cracked as he confessed to Leah's murder, describing the moment of blind rage that led to her death. Tears streamed down his face as he admitted, "I didn't know what to do. I called my father. He said he'd handle everything." Ethan detailed how Walt had orchestrated the cover-up, from burying Leah's body to staging the scene as a robbery. The revelations sent shockwaves through the community. Walt Branson, a man once revered as a symbol of justice and integrity, was now implicated in a heinous crime. His arrest was met with disbelief and outrage. The image of the respected judge in handcuffs, being led out of his home, shattered the trust of those who had once admired him. The fallout was swift and unforgiving. Former colleagues expressed their shock, but whispers began to surface about Walt's unchecked power and past improprieties that had gone ignored. The Branson name, once synonymous with respectability, became a cautionary tale of corruption and betrayal. If you've been captivated by this shocking case, don't forget to subscribe to Vic's True Crime Stories for more stories like this one. Let's keep digging into these complex tales of betrayal, power, and justice. The fallout from the Branson family tragedy was as swift as it was devastating. When the truth about Judge Walter Branson came to light, the community that had once revered him as a symbol of justice and integrity was left reeling. The same man who had presided over countless cases, delivering verdicts in the name of fairness, was now exposed as a manipulative figure who had abused his power for personal gain. Outrage spread like wildfire. People who once admired Walt were horrified by the depth of his betrayal, not just to the justice system, but to his own family. Leah's story became a rallying cry. Advocacy groups emerged, using her name to shine a light on the plight of abuse victims and the vulnerabilities of those trapped in toxic relationships. Her death became more than a tragedy. It became a symbol of resilience and a call to action. Vigils were held in her memory, with candles lighting up the night as her family and supporters pledged to fight for change. Petitions for reforms in the justice system and stricter accountability for those in positions of power gained traction, as Leah's story inspired a movement to prevent such betrayals from happening again. Meanwhile, Walt Branson's downfall was absolute. Gone were the days of the polished robes and commanding courtroom presence. Now he sat in a stark prison cell, a man stripped of the power and respect he had spent his life cultivating. Clutching an old family photo, Walt was forced to confront the choices that had brought him here. The image showed a moment frozen in time, a smiling family before the lies, betrayal, and tragedy unraveled their lives. But now, that legacy was destroyed, and the name Branson had become synonymous with scandal. Leah's family, on the other hand, chose to channel their grief into something meaningful. They organized marches and fundraisers, ensuring that Leah's memory would not be defined by the circumstances of her death, but by the changes her story inspired. At one vigil, her parents stood silently before a photo of Leah, placing a single white rose beneath it. The image of her bright smile reminded everyone of what had been lost and the cost of silence and unchecked power. This case leaves us with difficult questions. What does this story reveal about power and betrayal? Could anyone have stopped this tragedy before it spiraled so far out of control? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your perspective. If you found this story compelling, don't forget to subscribe to Vic's True Crime Stories for more cases that uncover the darkest corners of human behavior. Together, let's continue to explore these gripping tales and spark the conversations that matter most.